So for anyone who is joining us in the White Owl Room for the first time, my name is Elizabeth LaFontaine. I am a director of analytical research here at Placer. And our session right now is going to be really interesting for those of you who love physical retail because we are going beyond digital, sponsored by our partners at Encounter. So I don't know if everybody in this room knows this, but physical retail is back, or maybe it never really left us. But in all of the conversations that we've had so far this fall from a Placer perspective, we're hearing retailers being extremely bullish about their store opening plans for 2025. And that's not something that we've heard over the past few years. Retailers have been closing stores or changing stores, but retailers are back to opening stores. But it's not necessarily about just opening a number of new doors, but opening the right doors. And so much of that is built around the in-store experience. So what we're going to be hearing about in this session is really about in-store experiences that are actually driving revenue. It's not just about getting people in store, but it's about actually driving revenue and getting those consumers to convert. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to, once again, to Kevin Ching, our SVP of Retail, Restaurants, and Advertising here at Placer.
Yeah. Also, can we give it up for your kicks? Those are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, welcome everybody. I'm joined here on stage by my two good friends, Hans and Alex. Hans Fishman is he's the in-store retail media expert. There's really no other way to explain it for Encounter. He's been leading programmatic in advertising for in-store experiences for physical spaces for a very, very long time, right? That's been his roots way before, in-store retail media became a thing. So that's Hans. He's joined here by Alex Weisenberger, who's Director of Client Success at R.R. Donnelley. And just another longtime ad tech veteran, really helps customers leverage the platforms and get the most out of them. So, I'm going to start with the first question here, in-store retail media. It's projected to be $8.5 billion by the end of this year, which is, if you had a graph up here, it would be this amazing hockey stick, almost a straight line, I'd guess. But I guess my question is, why?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think the key to it, and it's not a number that everybody realizes. It's the biggest little industry that nobody even realizes is there. If you're not familiar, in-store retail media is the idea of actually reaching and delivering messages physically in stores as opposed to retail media digitally, right? When we're in apps and doing e-commerce, the idea of putting signage in stores to deliver the same kinds of messages when people are making purchase decisions in real time. Am I going to buy Jif or Skippy peanut butter, right? The ability to deliver that message, personalize it, maybe attach an offer, but then build it into the overall shopping experience is this large market globally that if you were to travel, say, to a Carrefour in France, you'll see 60, 70 screens inside the store. You travel to Latin America, you see them inside the store. It's slow develop here in the US, but in Canada, they're on all the Loblaw stores. So as we start looking at what this opportunity is and what is in-store retail media, it's really a unique chance for brands to reach consumers while they're trying to make a decision and actually influence that purchase decision. And for retailers, it's really an opportunity to generate revenue from your store aisles in a way that you've never been able to before. Start thinking outside the linear foot in terms of margin and revenue.
And if you really think about it, traditional media has always been about driving people into a location, but that media and that opportunity to convert always stopped outside the four walls of the actual retailer. Right. We used to say that we can drive all this interest and all this foot traffic go into a retailer, but once they make it into your store, it's your job to convert them. It's your job to sell them. Right. But this is an opportunity to help retailers who may not have the marketing or the media savvy to consistently convert. Right. That's the name of the game. Right. We want to put media in these stores where traditionally it was kind of stopped outside. Now we're giving these retailers a mechanism to actually convert and drive more ROI, drive more revenue, and drive more conversions.
And really the key is if we start thinking about these apps and websites and all of that, there are large product teams and they use their tools the same way that Facebook uses them and Google uses them to help make the results more personalized, to deliver contextual results, to use targeted results. And the key thing is then all of a sudden these apps become interesting. The problem is that the apps themselves are creating a different problem now for retailers. As dollars shift into e-commerce, they're left with this sort of interesting problem of the margin differential between digital and physical retail. That margin differential is not a small problem. It's actually a very significant problem, particularly for the publicly traded retailers, because per square foot, it's not as profitable. So they start getting pressure to start divesting the physical retail. Here's the problem. We have examples, Toys R Us, Bed Bath & Beyond, of companies that have foregone having physical retail, and they quickly dissolve into nothing. They quickly no longer become players because it's very hard to compete in the digital world when there's a billion players that have knockoff products. The physical store is an anchor. It's a marketing tool. It is a presence. It's a beacon for Nordstrom's or for Macy's or for Target. And they need to, very specifically, need to bolster the margins physically in these stores. They need to rethink what their store is. It's no longer just a place where we sell product. You need to rethink about it. And this is a kind of an interesting way of thinking, which is that, we all got one of these, right? When we bought our phone, it was identical. My phone looks just like your phone. However, over the course of days and weeks, it quickly becomes personalized to us. The reason why is there's a huge technology back end that helps to allow for the personalization of that device. Can we, and this is the simple process that we started 3-4 years ago, which is, how do we start to personalize the shopping experience? How do we make it more custom? How do we make it more unique so that we could bring forward the technologies that we use for targeting and personalization in the digital world, the things that my entire career has been based on in terms of product management? How do we apply that in a physical environment, which, by the way, is not an easy thing to do? It's almost impossible, which is why we don't see the penetration that we need. However, that is in fact what we have built out, which is we've taken effectively what is ad tech and we've put it and attached it to digital signage. We're not digital signage trying to do ad tech. The key difference is that we come in and we understand personalization, contextuality, we understand the personalization. All of those things come into play. And, when it starts to look like, and really what we're driving towards is this really large opportunity that's out there. The key is, in what we're pulling off of, is that every single retailer there is, up to Walmart, has more foot traffic than they do digital traffic by a very large degree. It's not even close. And when you look at the numbers, when you think about what e-commerce has actually never cracked 20% of retail spend. It's generally just about, anywhere from 17 to 20%, somewhere in there. When we look at retail and we look at grocery and C-store specifically, it actually is 88%. And so we start looking at these large retail environments with thousands and thousands of stores that are sitting in my neighborhood and your neighborhood. And the people that are in those stores are your neighbors and our friends and everybody that we go to visit. And I don't let anyone pick my tomatoes for me, right? You have that experience. I have that experience. That's interesting, though, because if you were actually in Kevin's earlier session talking about, bringing audiences in and how do we start to segment and start thinking about retailers, every one of those retailers has spent tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars marketing in your local environments to drive traffic to their physical store. When you add all that together, most retail is still physically happening in aisles, not digitally.
Okay. And kind of expanding on that, going back to, you referenced Kevin's session earlier, I think the number was 83.7% of commerce is still happening in store. So what does that mean when you think about building those audiences, reaching those consumers, right? I think this is something that Hans has been telling me for some time now, is the audience that you have exposure to in a retail environment, thinking a grocery store, a C-store, a drugstore, is very similar to the audience that you can reach in TV, in linear TV. Right? If you think about an individual store multiplied out by a chain, right, you're reaching tens, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people on a monthly basis. So rather than trying to reach them in a traditional but not super efficient way by purchasing TV, why not reach them at the actual shelf, even if it's non-endemic, right? Even if we're talking about insurance or auto or entertainment or tuning campaigns, it doesn't have to be Kraft mac and cheese, right? It can be Amazon's new show. It can be your local Ford dealership has a holiday savings. Why not reach them in this environment versus hoping that you reach them on their couch?
And I think where this comes into play is that I'm sure most people know the term retail media network. Familiar with this? Okay. Retail media networks are this idea that you have a shopping experience digitally, and there's now advertising inside of that shopping experience, sponsored ads inside of Amazon. Okay. That's $100 billion industry in the last 5-6 years, grew out of nothing. Okay. But here's the thing. If everybody has more foot traffic and most of the transactions are happening in the real world, wouldn't a real world retail media network be at least that big, if not larger? That's the opportunity. That's what we're going for. That's what we're building and have built up. Not just a network, but actually a whole platform to be able to support that. Because what we're trying to do is help retailers generate more revenue per linear foot than they've been able to before. And we do this a couple of different ways. So the first thing to understand is that we're not alone. It is understood. There's been a number of studies recently, and in particular, Grocery Doppio came out and understands that this is already an $8.5 billion industry and nobody even realizes it. But so do the executives. So, in particular, retail executives and grocery, we just know because of the volume RFPs, this is happening everywhere. And in the next 18 months, you will see it in your Whole Foods because they've already deployed it. It is in Walmart. It's already happening there. You will see it in Kroger. You will see it in Albertsons. You're going to see it everywhere, and it'll just happen seemingly overnight. The key to it is how do you do it? And how do you use this information, not just what Placer generates in terms of what the audience looks like? How do you turn that information and use it in a way that makes sense from the purpose of contextuality and delivering a proper message? So I'm going to do a walkthrough. You're in a retail environment. This is a grocery store, for example, and you see digital signage. And, it's not Minority Report. This is, maybe a little overblown. Maybe it's a little underblown. But the point is there's digital signage. As you're walking up and down the aisles, right, you may get to a specific screen. And by the way, all different sizes and shapes. And in particular, if you're by the tomatoes, maybe it's an ad for pasta. Now, it could just easily be a recipe. This is how you make tomato sauce. Maybe it then has the equivalent of product placement by talking about it. But that information is translated in the form of what does a store look like and what is the layout of the store. What we have built is the ability to not follow individuals. We're not tracking phones. We're not using cameras or any of that stuff. We actually track the basket and the cart. It's completely anonymous. As you go up and down the aisles, we see where you are and how you interact with those screens, what the engagement time is. That then comes back into transactions and exposure and engagement to advertising. Tying that all together allows for us to now start looking at it from how do we deliver an appropriate message at the right time to the right consumer. A prime example, I'm standing in the bread aisle. Now, I could deliver an ad for Wonder Bread, right? But I see, based on the tech that we put out, that the person came from the deli aisle, right? They were over there looking at some turkey and some sliced cheese. So maybe now the ad's actually for mayonnaise. If I saw that they came from the Capri Sun, they likely have children, so we actually do ads for peanut butter and jelly while they're standing in the bread aisle. That contextuality, fully anonymized, allows for us to actually provide more personalized message, more contextual message in this environment. Now, this is advertising amidst a ton of other creative content. It's not trying to turn a grocery store into NASCAR. I grew up in the grocery business. My family owned grocery stores. The last thing I want to do is turn the grocery store into Times Square. The goal is the technology that enables that level of understanding of which content to deliver. Not necessarily an ad, it's content. Can just easily be used by the retailer themselves to deliver messages. Peaches are in season, so maybe they're talking about peaches on sale this week. Now, also here's some graham crackers and some other things to go make a cobbler, right? Lots of different ways to think about that. That's then boldened by a peach cobbler recipe that is done by the store manager, and it's a video or something along those lines. The point is that all that's available to create this fantastic customer experience.
And really, when you take it even a step further, you're thinking about from the lens of a media buyer, right? Everything is projection based. This is a true one-to-one attribution. Consumer is in front of a screen. We're able to see their pathing throughout the store. We're able to see what they purchased at the register in a completely anonymized way. But that is a one-to-one. That is one ad play to one impression to one consumer. There's no multiplier. There's no projection on top of that. So when you talk about efficiency of spend from a media buying and purchasing lens, it really is it's game changing as far as the ability to remove any of the projections and the forecasting on top of that impression delivery and be really true of one-to-one.
And speaking of game changing, so there's actually a store not too far from here that has our system deployed. And, our first stat is on sales lift. So long story short, I mean, you've all seen signage in stores, not digital signage, paper signage our entire lives. It's been there, right? The reason why it's there is because it actually increases sales. That's well known, well established. Digital signage, however, actually lifts that a bit. It's iterative on top of that. So we can definitively say that we produce sales lift of at least 10 to 15%. Because a digital sign can cover more products, it allows you to lift more items, the sales of more items physically in that store. However, that store that's not too far from here, it's just a short Uber right away. It's an independent store. It's only one of them. They happen to have private labels. By the way, it's New Jersey's favorite grocery stores voted on by New Jersey Magazine. But they have private label products. And one of them is private label coffee. And they have private label cookies that they bake right there in the store. Month over month, using this same concept, we're able to lift the cookie sales by 27%. And we lifted coffee sales by 24%. If you're an independent grocer, think about that. That is massive difference. That's a huge amount of sales. And that literally is in 30 days. We know it works. We know how to drive it. However, it doesn't just increase sales. It actually creates additional revenue. Increasing sales is a fantastic way for a retailer to make money, of course. Who doesn't want to sell more? But the thing is, the advertising that's then generated by other brands coming in, Hellmann's Mayonnaise or Coca-Cola wanting to advertise on those shelves, is a channel of revenue that has never been available before unless you're one of the majors. The majors have shopper dollars coming to them all day long, trade dollars, right? That's not the case for independents. Independents don't have that same access. This allows them to now start being organized and structured in a way so that they can become a channel for those dollars to flow into their stores. The third way is the data that's generated. It's not the footpathing data. That's certainly applicable. But for advertising purposes, the way that return on investment is measured is something called return on ad spend. I put $1 in and I got $1.25 in sales out. Okay. That transaction data as an operator has value because it tells me how to re-merchandise my store, but it doesn't have value in the marketplace. A common factor inside of the advertising world is what's called a sales lift study. The sales lift study does cost money. So here is some data that's sitting inside of every single retailer on the planet, the smallest bodega to the largest store, that currently has zero value that now does have value and gets appended to the advertising. So there are 3 new revenue streams for every linear foot of store aisle that was not available yesterday. And that's how we can make a big difference in terms of how to make money for retailers while improving the customer experience and providing a more holistic approach to how to message and market to consumers.
And
So, Colin, wait, sorry, can I just ask a question on that one? Let me just get this right. So, because I almost feel like, did you bury the lead that you have sensors on the cart so you understand the path, right? And then I think I heard that when you're in the bread aisle, or in here in this case the coffee or the cookies aisle, you're actually understanding where that particular cart has been. There's no PII, and you put that sort of something relevant. It's dynamic. Is that what I heard? And is that live?
That is
live.
That is live. And actually, I'm
Incredible.
going to jump ahead because we'll come back to you, Alex. Let me just jump ahead real quick. The dream of any presenter is that the next slide is exactly the question that was just asked. But hey, we're 8 ahead. It's okay. Thank you, Kevin. So look, this is what Placer is today. Placer is fantastic. They're a tremendous partner of ours. We are fully integrated with Placer. We love Placer. We love Placer. Okay, this is effectively what we get before we start a campaign. Where are consumers coming from? And going back to Kevin's earlier section, that of course gets broken down by demographics and all kinds of opportunities that we can tie it in and really have a very clear picture on who's physically inside your store. However, we then take it, and when we talk about and we look at how people travel through the store, we have it down to less than a meter. So I know that you're here, or I know you're there about here. I know you're about here. As you're traveling through the stores, there are digital screens, perhaps. Maybe there's other kinds of signage, maybe just static signage. It doesn't particularly matter because the measurement is just determining where somebody is physically in a store. It's not tracking your phone. We're not using cameras. It's tracking the basket or cart as you travel up or down the aisles. As you're doing this, we can now start pulling together using data science all kinds of interesting information. Which sections of your store are outperforming? How do we drive people in? It gives a very granular look in terms of how to rethink your store. And when we talk about that linear foot that we're discussing, that's exactly what we're doing. And it provides all kinds of really interesting stats that have not been available before without physically having somebody standing there just staring at people. We can do it in camera, as they say. When we pull it all together, we start looking at it combined with the transaction data, we really have a very different view on how to think about not just the audience have assembled, but actually how to tie them together and how to monetize them. So when I rewind and we go back to Alex is going to talk at length about how we push audiences and how to monetize those audiences. We have this information, we pull it back. We now can segment this against the audiences that are collected and really start helping the retailer think about their store, not just as a place where we sell stuff, but how do we market to the consumers that we've paid millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to acquire? How do we start thinking about them in the way that like a Facebook thinks about customers, right? I'm sure you've all heard that, if you're not paying for something, you are the customer, right? In some respects, that's what we're now enabling for retailers, but not in a creepy way and not in an invasive way, not in a way that is not endemic to what we're already doing all day, every day.
And think about what you're seeing. If you go back, Hans, think about what you're seeing here from a data perspective. If you are a brand who wants to buy into this ecosystem and wants to buy into this network, right? If you are a cheese or say a mayo ad, let's say Hellman's use as an example, right? But you understand that 15 or 20% of the people that are purchasing your product are coming from the baby aisle. Think about how you can pull that data out and use that in your other programmatic digital channels, right? Whether it's your SEO, whether it's your social, your display, your cross device, right? If you know that people that are purchasing Hellman's mayonnaise also have a high propensity of purchasing baby products, why not use that information in your search? Use that in your creative. Use that extension of this data that you're pulling in to further alert and better amplify your other media channels, right? The amount of data that we've got here, we haven't really seen anywhere before. So the ability to use and leverage this data in really unique ways, when we talk to brands about this, they are chomping at the bit to get their hands on it. And thinking back about the signage, the example that Hans had talked about, I'll use myself as, I'm going to go stand down here. I'll use myself as an example, right? I am the ultimate sucker for the impulse purchase at the register. My favorite retail media network name, the Gulp Network, is 7-Eleven. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So I'm in my local 7-Eleven. I'm standing at the register. I look up. I see a big screen, and there's a sign for strawberry Mentos. Haven't had a strawberry Mentos in years. I look down. It's right in front of me. I buy it. I eat the whole sleeve. I get a stomach ache. Not the point of the story, right? But the point is that signage directly impacted my purchase, right? And now every time that I'm going back, I'm looking for that strawberry Mentos because they are fantastically delicious. But the point being is that these signs work, right? And they drive that impulse purchase. If you weren't thinking about it before, you're thinking about it now. So that consideration has just gone up. So I promise this is not going to be a commercial for Placer, even though this is their conference and Dan really wants it to be a commercial for Placer. But these are the kind of things, these are the kind of information that we can pull out, right, for a retailer level, right, for Festival Foods, for Maywood's Marketplace in New Jersey that Hans was talking about, right? This is the kind of information that we can bring to the retailers so that they have a better understanding of who their audience is and what's going on in the store, right? They've got almost 600,000 visits over 12 months with the average dwell time of 18 minutes. Right. So you've got this small window of time, but at least you know what that window of opportunity is. You've got 18 minutes from when that consumer comes into the store to impact their purchasing decision outside of just what's on their shopping list. So again, just more information. We talked about understanding where people are coming from and where they're going. How do you use this? Right. This is not just about in store, right? That's the name of this session, and that's kind of really what we're focused on. But think about all of the other digital tactics that you can be appending and applying to this, whether, again, it's social, it's digital out of home, it's CTV, right? Understanding that people are coming from home, they're coming from work, they're coming from the gym. Where are they going next, right? If we know that instead of saying work 15.2%, we know that 15.2% of people that are coming to Westside Market are coming from the gym. Well, one, that's different kind of targeting sets. That's different kind of CTV and social applications, but also for digital out of home, right? Let's put ads on gym screens knowing that we're going to drive them into this location, right? Kraft mac and cheese, Hellman's mayonnaise, whatever it is, strawberry Mentos. Maybe there's a sale going on, but we know that there's a high propensity of people that are coming from these areas. So why not have a better understanding of that in the real world? I love this slide because, again, for a retailer specific, it gives us an opportunity to be a lot more strategic and targeted around for a digital out of home, for CTV, for programmatic cross device display. How far out around the store should we be putting a radius? Should we be serving this media? Well, from this chart, we know, and again, Newark is kind of an outlier, but for the most part, people are coming from 1 to 3 miles away. So that is a strategic data point that we can point to and say, for digital out of home, for cross-device display, for all of these things, let's focus on a 3-mile radius around the store because we want to drive them into the location so that we can have them execute more purchases and increase their basket size. So this is the journey, right? So understanding where should we be placing these ads and how far, how wide should we be layering in this targeting radius and this targeting set? Well, we know from this that it's the immediate area around us. But you can also see that people are coming from as far north as Paramus and as far south as Hasbrook Heights. I'm from Long Island. I don't know what any of this means, but I know that they are towns in New Jersey, right? So this allows us to really understand where should we be putting our media that's not just in store, right? We want to funnel them in store and then we want to convert them with this network, but we need these data points so that we can really understand what is the correct radius, what is the correct area that we should be focused on. So this is a specific example. This was a client that was focused on sponsoring events at the United Center in Chicago. And super arbitrarily, the client said, we want to see what kind of out-of-home inventory we've got within a 4-mile radius. Okay, quick poll. And what you can see highlighted here in the fancy red is that Oak Park sits outside of the radius. Again, I'm from Long Island. I don't know anything about Chicago, but Oak Park sits outside of this radius. But then when we plug this into Placer, what we saw is that there's actually a lot of people that are going to this location from the Oak Park neighborhood. So if we had just arbitrarily thrown a dart at a dartboard and set a 4-mile radius, we're missing all of these consumers and all of this potential opportunity to impact, influence, and alert consumers that this product is available at the United Center sponsoring these events, right? So again, this isn't a couple years ago where we're saying, let's do a 5-mile radius because why not? That makes sense to me, idiot sales guy that wants to sell you a deal, right? But now we can be a lot more informed and strategic about using data and using platforms like Placer to be very strategic around how we're building the strategy. And what's cool too is it's not just about the journeys, right? We can also look at it at a zip code level. So they had asked for 4 miles and we showed them what 4 miles was, but we also showed them the 2 different cuts that we could pull out of Placer, which was the visitation journey, but also the zip code pathing. So we said, hey, we can do your 4 miles, we can do this radius, or we can focus just on these zip codes, right? Ultimately, we went with the radius, but we extended it out to 8 miles because that captured the majority of the traffic that was coming into these locations. And when you think about that foot pathing and that expansion around the actual physical retailer, right? We talked about digital out of home, CTV, social, right? Thinking about the different cool creative ways that we can drive people in with cool different creative formats, right? So these were 2 campaigns that we ran recently where we did digital out of home extensions on top of their in-store activation so that we could drive people into their locations while also being not just physically on site. We could put it in areas around it using this Placer data to understand the where, the why, and the how.
Sorry, I think I have a 2-part question here. So one is, you talked about going in other like Carrefour in France, 600 screen, or I don't forget the number, 50, 60 screens in a single store, right? So the other parts of the world have certainly put this out there. I've been in Asia where you have screens on like the bathroom windows, right? So there's a lot more screens and, maybe in the US because, what are the big companies in the US? Google, Facebook, Amazon. There's so much like emphasis on the one-on-one, kind of what I was getting at. Like, did we like chase this shiny object of one-on-one? But I don't know. Maybe I was wrong because the IAB came out with something that said, let's just get like, it's 8.5 million versus why isn't it larger is what you asked, because if the in-store retail is 85%.
Because it's hard.
It's hard, right? And so the IAB came out with this thing around, well, we're just going to create this impression multiplier that allows you to guess. But I don't know. My first question is are you guys like actually doing better measurement on those counts? That'd be my first question. And my second question is, you keep saying we, like, we are you guys managed service, or where can people buy this from you if you are that person?
From me.
Take that one. Yeah. If Alex is this
Give me your credit card.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of points to make. So I do want to call some attention to something, which is going to Kevin's session and sort of where we started, right? Which is every retailer wants to drive more traffic in their store. And when we think about driving that traffic, it's because we want to sell more goods. But what we've shown is that there's actual other opportunities to make money. And so the concept of looky-loos, somebody who's just window shopping, if they're in your store, you now have the ability to deliver messaging to them, right? So there's an entire way now to monetize consumers that you didn't have before. And when you start thinking about these tools, and you think about who you bring in, whoever has the highest lifetime value may not be measured just based on the number of items in your CRM. And that's something to think about. Now, I don't have a clear answer. That's the world we're going into. This is a new world. It's a brave new world that we're looking at. But it allows for a retailer to rethink about it's no longer just a place to buy stuff. We have to start thinking about it as a destination, and that destination is very important. So let me jump ahead to answer Kevin's question. Got to go forward. There we go. Okay. So Kevin, your question was like, what do we do? The problem in retail media networks, and it's quickly become a problem. By the way, this is like from this week, this particular slide, is that essentially Amazon and Walmart have sucked up every dime of retail media. And when you look at this in Europe, I just saw the same chart just for France. It's almost identical. There's very little money being left on the table for what are established brands. I mean, look on the right-hand side. Albertsons is not a small company. Kroger is not a small company, but they get a very tiny portion of the retail media spend. And the reason why, to Kevin's point, is that it's not structured and it's not organized. These are smaller retailers. They don't have the teams necessary to go after these shopper dollars in a meaningful way. And the smaller you get, the harder it becomes. And to give you a sense of scale, let's not bother with Amazon and Walmart, but we can talk about Kroger. Kroger is very public about the dollars they generate from their RMN. It's part of their quarterly reports and all of that kind of stuff. And it's a $4 billion business today. That's Kroger. Albertsons. Kroger has 2,400 stores. Albertsons has 2,248 stores, right? It's basically the same size. It's a $40 million business. $4 billion versus $40 million. The reason why is the usage and engagement of their app. No one's using the Albertsons app. So there's no opportunity to deliver advertising. So the retail media business is not structured in a way that will allow them to succeed. That's an important point to make when you start thinking about companies. Albertsons is huge, right? Now let's talk about a smaller player like a Hy-Vee or a Publix or an H-E-B, right? Yeah, they have an IT team, but they don't have the digital team necessary to drive the usage and engagement of their app in a meaningful way. But it doesn't matter because most of their value isn't there. The value is on the store floor. So by pulling this into their environments, that's where you really create the opportunity. And to help them do that,
and from the buying side on the previous slide, if you think about the major holding co's or even the major, like the agency holding companies or even the major brands, do they have the headcount and the staffing to really work these retail media networks, right? A lot of them are hands-on keyboard. A lot of them are more self-service. Even if they're managed service, do you have the teams and do you have the infrastructure to manage your Amazon retail media network and your Walmart and your Albertsons and your Kroger? Think about how much that starts to sprawl and how expansive that gets, right? So these major agency holding companies and these major brands, even the Coca-Colas and the Procter & Gambles of the world, they have to prioritize which retail media networks are going to get their attention and ultimately get their dollars. So we are kind of creating a breakthrough to kind of help break through that entire noise.
Right. I mean, to really simplify it, every one of those companies you see on the right has to have a huge marketing effort to make media buyers aware that they even exist. You're a drop in an ocean. You're literally just a drop in an ocean. And the players that are out there aren't focused on delivering against that. And that's one of the problems that we've solved. And we've had to solve it because out of necessity, quite frankly, which is that we think this is a better way to go. We think it's a better opportunity for the marketplace. So, Alex spoke towards how we look at things, and so we've pulled that together into a buying portal. This is literally, the first stop on what is going to be a lot of encounter you're going to hear in the next 18 months. We actually have a massive webinar with some of our strategic partners on the 17th. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see it. But we're sitting down and talking to our partners at Google and at Lenovo and at, if you're not familiar, WPP, which is currently the largest ad agency on the planet, although that may change here because of a merger. But the point being is that as we start talking about this and educating the marketplace, our goal is to actually help retailers drive and funnel that revenue through so that they have a tool that's actually more suited towards them rather than a digital DSP. And nothing against DSPs. They're my lifeblood. They've been paying my mortgage and putting my daughter through college for the last many, many years. But the problem is that they are sort of one size fits all. And this is a new media channel. It works in a different fashion. It is a different set of deliverables. It's a different set of metrics. And that's what we wanted to address and talk about. So this is just a screenshot. Obviously, if you talk to us, we'll share quite a bit more. But long story short, I think to answer your question, we're going to be educating the market. The market itself is, now that it's 8.5 billion, people are starting to pay attention. I think you're going to be hearing about this quite a bit over the coming next, 18, 24, 36 months. So.
All right. Thank you, Hans. Thank you, Alex. Big round of applause. And, out of that whole thing, what I hear is they chose Placer Discover to launch. I don't know if there's anything else out there. No, thank you very much, guys. That was great. Amazing.
Yeah, thank you.